Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay, and welcome to an extremely important week. Now, there are certain days around the world that kind of everybody knows. We know Christmas Day is on the 25th of December, Independence Day falls on the 4th of July. Generally, hopefully, we know when our wife or husband's birthday is, when our wedding anniversary is. If you ever want to make sure you never ever forget it again, just forget it once. But then there is an extremely important date, and that is this Saturday. It is the 15th of June, and it is International Chenin Blanc Day. Now, it should be a public holiday all around the world. For the life of me, I can't work out why it's not, but it is an opportunity to celebrate as if it's a public holiday because, given it's a Saturday, it's the chance to open up some Chenin Blanc and to pay tribute to a grape that really is becoming the defining genre for South African wine. The Chenin we're making, which we make I think about 5 times more of than the next biggest producer around the world, is at its top end quite exceptional, and even in the mid-range we're making some really good wine that we can be exceptionally proud of. Now, I'm not just showcasing some wine, I'm also showcasing this rather smart t-shirt that the Chenin Association have sent up. If you've watched the Dan Nichols show, you know I live in 3-piece suits when I'm doing that particular show. That's Efemol, the South African designer, who I'm very proud to represent. But even he, I suspect, would be rather taken by this quite dashing t-shirt that I have on today in celebration of Chenin. So I'm going to be drinking some Chenin Blanc this weekend, and I hope that you will as well. And I've got a good incentive for you. If you listen to the end of the show, there is a competition where you could win some rather cool stuff that will send your way. But before we do that, time to drink some Chenin Blanc. Now, we've had plenty of it on the show a while. You might remember a couple of months back we had a really cool chat to Pete Goff-Wood, the celebrity chef, who's obsessed with Chenin Blanc. I'm not quite an obsession, but I do like it very much indeed. And I've got 4 bottles of Chenin to try and share that love with you today and give you some ideas as to what you might like to pick up for your own Chenin celebration on International Chenin Blanc Day this weekend. So let's start with something from a little estate you might just have heard of. It's called Nederburg. Now, Nederburg is obviously a massive organisation. They make a huge amount of wine. And I think because of the sheer volume of wine they make and the fact that they are such a big and commercial label, that we sometimes lose sight of the fact that in and amongst everything they do, they actually do make some exceptional wine. There's a lot of wine they make in large volumes that sits at perhaps a slightly more entry level or middle of the market space, but they also make a lot of wine that really does deserve some accolade. They got the Platters Winer of the Year a couple of years back. They've got some terrific winemakers and a real passion for and history of making some fine South African wine. And they're a label that people have come to know around the world. That's very important in terms of lifting the whole South African image, so the rest of the planet learns the secret that we've kept far too guarded for far too long, and that our wine is pretty much better than anybody else's. So this is the Anchorman, and that comes with a bit of history. The Anchorman is not Ron Burgundy. The Anchorman in this case is a guy by the name of Philippus Volvaert. There's a little bit of information on him on the label. He was the guy in, I think, about 1971, bought the farm, started planting, and amongst the grapes that he planted was Chenin Blanc in not a small amount. And that is what has come together to make this particular Chenin. Now, it's from a range that the guys do at Nederburg that's a little bit higher end. You're probably looking at about 130, maybe 140 rand a bottle, around about there. It's a wine that's got a bit of oak on it. It's also in a bit of stainless steel, so it's not too heavily wooded and should form a nice balance for a grape that is just absolutely marvellous with so many different foods. Now, that lovely pale gold colour gives way to one of my very favourite noses. There's a delightful perfume that's fairly easy to identify with the majority of Chenin. There's a fruity creaminess to it. Very nice indeed. So this is the 2017, couple of years old. It's quite a soft Chenin. There's a nice lightness to it. The fruit is still very much there, and just that creaminess. Talk about Chenin with food. One of the things I'd love to see is people drinking more Chenin Blanc with curry. We tend to think, oh, curry, I must have a beer. And a beer can be great with a curry, but I think a Chenin Blanc just cuts through that spice so delightfully and complements it really nicely. And this will do the job, maybe on a lighter curry because it's a slightly lighter Chenin Blanc. But if you don't drink too much Chenin, if maybe you haven't drunk any at all, then this wouldn't be a bad way to start. The Anchorman ahead of International Chenin Blanc Day from Nederburg. Our second of our Chenins is one I actually had a week ago. I had dinner at Terroir at the Kleine Zolze estate. We drank a fair amount of the Kleine Zolze wine. As I've said a few times on this show, I feel over the last 5 or 6 years their wine has really stepped up from being a good wine to extremely good wine, and they've won a number of international awards that would back that up. But we also snuck in a bottle of this, the Stellenrust, and it's an impressive bottle in particular because it's got that steel toe cap glued onto the front of it. So I asked my director, Ronaldo, what he thought that 53 might be. He had a fair few good ideas. He thought maybe the wine was made on a train, and then that was the number of the train on which it was made or transported, or maybe something to do with Stellenbosch. Well, 53 actually refers to the history, because the grapes that this wine is made from were planted 53 years ago. So over half a century for this particular vineyard to take shape and emerge in 2019 with a bottle for me to drink in my cellar in celebration of Chenin. So this particular Chenin from Stellenbosch, the grapes out of the Bottlery Hills area, I think some of this turned up the Nederburg auction not that long ago, an auction that's since been rebranded with an exciting new fine wine auction coming up later on this year. So some barrel fermented Chenin from some really, really old vines. And if the previous wine had a nice perfume, this one is even more intense. It's very concentrated and all the lovelier for it. Oh. So that's much like the nose was a bit more intense, so too the wine indeed, just a little more concentrated, a little more citrusy, a beautiful finish. And this was made with Hungarian oak. And I say that not because I can pick that up, but I just think it's a cool thing to be able to throw in. And it shows just some of the exotic nature of wine as a whole. Some French oak, but some Hungarian oak as well. If you're a Chenin Blanc winemaker, you would be able to explain far better than I can why that is important. All I can tell you is that the combination has worked out extremely well. And this is a Chenin Blanc that is beautifully composed, but like a lot of Chenin, has also got some time to go. So this is 2017. Certainly drink it now, but I might get hold of some and keep it for a little longer, because I found some older Chenin Blanc can be an absolute treat. Now on to one I've been looking forward to since this collection arrived from my friends at the Chenin Blanc Association from their sprawling headquarters in the Cape. This is from Thistle and Weed, which is not just a cool name, but also a brand that makes some really awesome labels. It's just got a cool, fun feel to it. And they're the Duvelki, and I apologise, I've been working on that for the last 48 hours. My Afrikaans needs a touch of work. Those devil thorns that you pick up, if you look really closely, you can see them on the label. They tend to get stuck in, especially if you're ever wearing a pair of Havaianas. You can pick up over a ton of these within under a minute if they're anywhere nearby. Now this is a label, and a Chenin in particular, that's become really, really well known amongst Chenin Blanc aficionados, because I think the last 2 editions of this have both picked up 5 stars from Platter and Team. It's the first time I'm having it, but I'm suspecting that provided I can get hold of some more, that it won't be the last. Slightly more aromatic nose than the previous 2, just a little spicier, a little sort of vanilla-ish, very Moorish. I was about to say it says do drink me, but then I find most bottles of wine say that to me one way or another. Oh. Beautiful. Kind of rises up with a beautiful smoothness and then just a little sharpness at the end. A beautiful kick, but really creamy. That when you get a mouthful of a really good risotto, that smoothness that's still got maybe a little bit of lemon zest to it, that's kind of what you're getting here. Just a lovely, round, delicious mouthfeel. And I think that vanilla on the nose speaks to that smoothness as that wine comes through. Oh, that is gorgeous. Right, another one to the list for International Chenin Blanc Day, and another reason why we're just doing such amazing things with Chenin Blanc. And with apologies to Bayers and the Pinotage team, who do great things with Pinotage in South Africa, I really think Chenin Blanc is leading the way in terms of our dominant grape varietal, because we make more of it than anyone else, because we're just doing things like what the guys at Thistle and Weed are doing in making such exceptional expressions of the grape. And if I'm not mistaken, I think these grapes here are even older. I think these are closing in on 60 years and not far off from a little gnarled corner of Paarl. So they've taken what probably aesthetically doesn't look like a great vineyard and turned it into something quite magical. And then to wrap up, now here's a wine with a really awesome story. You might remember Jonathan, he of the cool collection of kind of half cowboy, half Midwestern preacher hats, doing an interview with me about Avondale wines in a car park in Bryanston. It wasn't the most glamorous setting we've ever done content from, but we filmed there with him, and he talked about his winemaking process. He's basically one step short of running around his vineyards naked eating organic lentils. He's just a really, really focused winemaker or wine owner on terms of the organic process, of being good to the earth, of looking after the terroir which he oversees in as good a way as possible, so that the wine we get is having as little impact as possible on the environment while still producing exceptional wine. It's a terrific philosophy. It's one I think more and more people are sharing in varying degrees, but Jonathan is definitely a champion. He's also, though, somebody together with Cornet, his winemaker, a great visionary, someone who is quite happy to experiment, to play around, to discover new aspects of the winemaking world. And so we have this. Now, if you're South African, you're seeing Qvevri, you might be thinking Nederburg, and maybe this is a Xhosa wine. The Nederburg is actually Qvevri, and it comes from Georgia, of all places. Now, Georgia has a burgeoning wine industry. They've been making it for years, but we're starting to see more Georgian wine around the world. And so Cornet, I think last year, went off to a couple of corners of Georgia to discover not just the wine they're making, but also the Qvevri, which are, for want of a better description, kind of big clay eggs, giant amphora, in which instead of the barrels with which you might associate the winemaking process are used to produce wine. So just these giant clay eggs called Qvevri, and I've been practicing my Georgian accent as well. It's a multilingual show this week, and this is the Qvevri Chenin Blanc from Avondale, and it's particularly important because you're going to be able to get your hands on some of this, and I'll explain how just as soon as I have tried it. So this from winemaker Cornet under Jonathan, the owner, and I don't know if it's reflective of the Qvevri. My Qvevri knowledge and understanding needs work, so Jonathan, I'm going to come and visit you so you can tell me a bit more about it. But there's a cloudiness to it. You know when you get an apple juice that hasn't been refined, so the good stuff before it's laced with sugar and preservatives and other stuff to shorten your life nice and quickly. So it's got a cloudiness to it, almost a slightly bronzer feel than the light gold of the previous wines. And again, that delightful Chenin aroma. And again, slightly perfumed as well. There's almost a bit of sort of a lavender type feel. Again, most appealing. And that's really interesting. That's different to the other three. It's a softer wine. And I don't know, again, it could well be the winemaking process. I have to do some Qvevri research. But the result is a delightful Chenin Blanc, but a bit softer than those ones. You can feel a softer fruit to it. Still a nice citrus edge. But a really interesting Chenin Blanc that I would definitely drink a lot more of. And I'd like to play around with this with some food. I think we'd have a lot of fun with a couple of fish dishes, but also something a little bit spicier that I think this could pair with quite well. But you don't necessarily need to take my word for it if that is what you do on a regular basis, because a case of this could be coming your way. And it's very simple. As I said at the start of the show, this is International Chenin Blanc Week, but in particular, Saturday, the 15th of June, is International Chenin Blanc Day, as my rather stylish Italian cut t-shirt would suggest. So what I'd like you to do is this. Take a photo of yourself between now and Sunday the 16th, which is Father's Day. Maybe some Chenin Blanc for Father's Day to follow up. Take a photo of yourself with a bottle of Chenin, post it onto the Dan Really Likes Wine Facebook page and mention that you are drinking Chenin Blanc. And we're going to choose 2 prize winners from those photos. One of you will get the chance to win a case of this Avondale Qvevri. and it's about 250 rand a bottle, so that's not a bad prize to have. And then we've also got a prize from Ken Forrester. I think we've got some of their old vine Chenin, we've got some of their chili rub, which I think Ken swears by. He washes his hair with it and does the dishes. He just loves the stuff. And we might even throw Ken in as well for a weekend if you'll have him, which probably most of you wouldn't. So a couple of cool prizes. All I need from you is a picture of yourself with a bottle of Chenin, glass in hand, and that's all in celebration of International Chenin Blanc Day. Big thank you to the Chenin Blanc Association of South Africa. You guys do terrific work. I'm really proud to see what you do for South African wine. You're taking our Chenin, you're exposing it to South Africa and to the world, and it tells a wonderful, wonderful story of a grape that's become quintessentially South African and that we in South Africa are doing such wonderful things with. Have a great International Chenin Blanc Day on Saturday. Post those pictures. Look forward to choosing some winners, and we'll see you back again next week. And if you are looking for a bit of Chenin, just head over to Pick n Pay. Join that Pick n Pay Wine Club. 20% off when you buy your wines. There's some terrific Chenin available. Indulge in some Chenin this weekend and support a lovely South African wine. Cheers.